you started working in the airline at the age of 15.
Growing up in England,
Yes.
every summer we worked. The first thing I used to do was look for stones. I was sent in the middle of the civil war going on with the Tamil Tigers. At the checkpoints, they're fully armed. Mohammed, it's time for you to get out, and it's no longer safe.
And you were told that there is a very important VVVIP coming.
That it is also aib for me to accept this. But I don't want to insult you. Tim, this is the first time I saw the Sheikh lose his cool.
Very angry.
Upset. Really upset.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. My dear brothers and sisters, working in the airline. Today I have a special guest that will take us through the journey of working in an airline. I don't want to get into details before introducing my honorable guest for today, Mr. Mohammed bin Mubarak Al Shukaili. Assalamu alaikum, Mr. Mohammed.
Alaikum assalam, Sheikh Hatim.
How are you today?
Oh, fantastic.
It's an honor to have you on the show.
Great to see you. Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Mr. Mohammed, you were the Vice President Marketing of Oman Air, and at the moment you are retired, isn't it?
Happily retired.
Happily retired. When did you retire, Mr. Mohammed?
3 years ago now.
3 years ago.
Yeah.
So you advise everybody to retire early?
Absolutely. It's a wonderful life after you've put in your hard work.
Yes. You know, Mr. Mohammed, what is interesting about your story is that you started working in the airline at the age of 15. And for those who are listening to this today, you were a teenager. So tell us the story. How did you get into the airline business? Why didn't you continue going to school? And what happened exactly?
Actually, the family had decided to move back to Oman. I grew up in England, in a place called Portsmouth in England.
Yes.
And my father had decided that the family should come back home to Oman.
Yes.
That's with my brother and my sister.
This was in the 70s?
This was in 1980.
1980, yes.
So the whole family moved back to Oman. And when I came back to Oman, of course, I was in secondary in England, Mayfield Secondary School at the time. And we all moved back. And unfortunately, or fortunately for me, they had said that if your father was Omani at that time and your mom was Omani, you had to go to school following the Omani curriculum, which was in Arabic.
Yes. And you didn't speak a single word of Arabic.
Unfortunately.
Yes.
So the options for me were very limited, i.e. go back to England and continue study, stay with a relative there, which I didn't want to do, yes. Or look for something else here in Oman. And at the same time, I had friends who had come back from England. And through them, I had heard that Gulf Air were recruiting people.
Now, this is a very strange thing where a 15-year-old boy would be attracted to the idea of working. I mean, what did your parents think?
Well, growing up in England,
yes,
every summer we worked. We were encouraged by our parents not to stay at home and do nothing, but go out and do a job. We worked at places like the Fun Fair,
yes,
during the summer holidays, school holidays. So it wasn't something new for me. I enjoyed doing that, and we would go, a group of us, cousins, my brother, we would all be out there doing a job. So when I came to Oman and I found that there is an opportunity to work for the airline industry, it was something very glamorous to me. And I thought, wow, this is, if I could get to work for an airline, this would be my dream come true.
And I would start earning.
And I would say, the earning part wasn't such a priority for me, if I can say that. Because alhamdulillah, we had parents who took very good care of us. We had our allowances that we were being given. So the earning part wasn't what was attracting me to actually go and work for the airline.
I'm very much intrigued to know what was the reaction of the manager who was recruiting people when you applied for the job?
He was surprised, shocked, and said, "Oh, 15." But the issue was the level of English that I spoke.
Yes.
That attracted him. At the same time, he was thinking, and I could see his thoughts going through his mind, saying, "But he's only 15. How can we take him at 15?" And to say the truth, he had a hard time convincing the authorities, convincing Bahrain. That
we are talking about Gulf Air because you were employed by Gulf Air.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And he had a hard time, but he was convinced. He liked the level of English that I spoke. He was convinced that I could add value to his team. So he fought hard and he got me on board in the end.
Mr. Mohammed, I understand that you lived far from the workplace, from the airport. You did not drive. And maybe in 1980, things were still difficult in Muscat in terms of the infrastructure, the roads, the transport, like buses and so on. Plus you had to work shifts. How did you manage? What did you do?
Absolutely. No, it was a very, very difficult situation. We lived in Sahadabi, and the morning shift started at 6 o'clock in the morning. It was 6 to 2. And then the afternoon shift from 2 to 10 at night.
Yes.
And then the night shift from 10 at night until 6 in the morning. Going to work in the morning was a nightmare for me because the house wasn't exactly on the highway. It was inside.
So you had to walk?
So I had to walk to the main road.
Where it was completely dark, no lights on the roads?
The moment I opened the door of our house around 4:30 in the morning, total darkness.
Subhanallah.
The first thing I used to do was look for stones.
Why would you have stones? Why would you look for stones?
They were wild dogs, barking all over the place.
MashaAllah.
And I'm 15 years old. So I would look for stones and say, okay, these stones will protect me as I walk to the main road. And I used to walk to the main road and chase away the dogs and wait in the main road for pickups that used to come from Kuryat.
Before you tell us about the pickups,
No.
How did you convince your dad to take this job?
My dad was, sure, 100% that I would not last a week.
So he was very sure.
Yeah, and he tried to make it as difficult as he could.
Yes.
For me to give up. Because he was very, very interested in me joining, at that time, another organization that he was told there are opportunities.
Yes.
And that organization would take me on and send me for further studies.
Okay, so he wanted you to continue your education.
Absolutely.
Okay, but you had another plan.
And I had another plan. And the way that our father and mother brought us up was very independent, and they listened to what we were looking to do ourselves.
Yes.
Sometimes, though, they tried to help us fail in order to go on the right track.
Yes.
And I think this was one of those opportunities where my dad was pushing me and making sure that it was as difficult as it could get for me to say, okay, I give up, I can't do this. But I was determined. I loved the job.
So you took your stones and
I went to the main highway.
You went to the main
highway. And I would wait there for these pickups which used to come from Kuryat, carrying fruits and vegetables to the markets in Muscat, in downtown.
This is 4 a.m.
4 a.m. in the morning. 4 a.m., 4:30 a.m. I would wait. They would pass by these vehicles.
Yes.
And I would wave them down, stop them, and get on board.
So, Mr.
And
Mohammed,
remember, I didn't speak a word of Arabic. Huh?
That's what I want to ask you.
Uh-huh.
You didn't speak a word of Arabic. How did you communicate with them?
Two things. Number one was the waving down, which didn't need any language.
Yes.
And number two, the word wadiyade. Wadiyade.
Wadi'ade.
And they would tell me, get on.
Yes.
So I would jump in the back of the pickup and in my uniform. And I would be dropped off at the roundabout of Wadiyade.
Yes.
I would pay my 200 beza to the taxi driver. and I would jump across the road to the other side,
Yes.
and wait for the Gulf Air Transport bus to pass by, and I would wave that to stop, and I would get on board the Gulf Air
So
Transport.
this meant you always had to be on time. Otherwise,
Absolutely.
you're going to miss the bus.
Absolutely. And I cannot remember a day that I was late. This was something that I was determined, number one, to do. And number two is I loved what I was doing.
So what was the reaction of your father after a month you not quitting?
He was pleasantly surprised in one way,
Yes.
because I was quickly making progress at the airport.
Yes.
And I was getting accolades, and my manager was continuously talking about how good I was at work, because I loved taking on any responsibility that was available. My job was basically to go out and meet aeroplanes and then hand over information to the cabin crew about the number of passengers that were going to come on board, if there were any special passengers, medical cases, VIPs, etc., and also hand over the weather report to the captain or co-pilot.
So you had to have communication skills to interact with the crew and the pilot.
Absolutely. And every single day almost we had passengers who disembarked in Muscat who had issues as well, who had problems, who were missing something or the other. So being able to communicate was very, very important for the job, for this particular job.
Now tell me, Mr. Mohammed, what did your colleagues think of you? I'm sure you have adults working at the airport and on the plane, and you have this skinny 15-year-old boy, being their colleague. How did it work out between you?
I was very, very, very fortunate. Because the people who surrounded me at the airport all treated me like their young brother.
MashaAllah.
And whatever advice they could give me, whether it was work-related, whether it was advice for me on my personal life,
yes,
I had very, very good people around me.
So you had direct mentoring?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mr. Mohammed, exactly after 3 years, when you turned 18, there was a golden opportunity that arose. What is that opportunity?
I was selected, or I applied for management training.
Yes.
And I was selected to go and be trained to become a manager in one of the stations of Gulf Air.
Abroad?
Abroad.
What did that mean?
That meant me leaving my parents, my brothers and my sister, and the surrounding that I had become familiar with, yes, my friends, going to a place where I knew nobody.
Your comfort zone?
Absolutely. Completely outside my comfort zone. Because you're being sent to live, not to visit, but to live in a place where you do not possibly you do not know a single person there.
The language is different, the culture is different.
Absolutely. So, it's daunting, to say the least.
So you completed the training, and then you had to leave now to the station to take over the responsibility.
The first place.
Did you have like a wish list? I wish if I would be sent to this country or this country or this country?
No.
You just said anything that comes.
They decide for you. You don't even say anything.
But management. Did you have any preferences?
Definitely. You wanted to go to beautiful places.
Yes.
But for me, at that point in time, going out and being given a station to manage was excitement enough.
Where were you sent?
Colombo, Sri Lanka.
MashaAllah.
But not the Colombo, Sri Lanka you know today. I was sent in the middle of the civil war going on with the Tamil Tigers.
Subhanallah.
People
killing one another.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
They must have loved you so much or hated you so much to send you there.
Absolutely.
Now, Mr. Mohammed, I am really interested to know the impression on the staff in Gulf Air Colombo when they saw this young man being their manager now. How was the first day?
The first day I arrived, I was booked in a hotel.
Yes.
And I was told that the keys of the car were with the receptionist. I
Yes.
should ask for as the airport manager, and the keys would be there for me. So I checked in, and in the evening, well, not in the evening, early morning, it was around, I was going to the airport around 3 in the morning.
Yes.
Our aircrafts arrived very early morning in Colombo. So I went to the receptionist and I said, I understand you have my car keys, and they gave me my car keys, and I said, now can you explain to me, how do I get to the airport? Because the airport was quite a drive away. It wasn't nearby.
So you
the
didn't
city.
have anybody receiving you
Nobody
or
at all.
to drive you around?
Nobody at all.
I told you they must have loved you so much or hated you.
Absolutely. So the receptionist drew for me a little map.
Yes.
And said, okay, this is how you get there. The roads were pitch dark, and they had checkpoints.
Because of the civil war.
Because of the civil war. Many checkpoints along the way.
Yes.
And when you approach a checkpoint, you're supposed to, first of all, stop before you reach the checkpoint. There are signs on the road.
Yes.
And you're supposed to switch on the light inside your car, and switch off your
External lights.
external lights.
Yes.
And then you almost roll your car towards the checkpoint. So I was briefed about this, and they told me you have to be very, very careful, because at the checkpoints they are fully armed, and if you do not do this, they do not know who you are. So they will treat you as a threat.
Yes.
You need to abide by this strictly, and that's what I did.
And you didn't speak the language?
I didn't speak a word of their language. My language was English, that's it. So I got to the airport. I got through each checkpoint safely.
Yes.
They basically looked inside the car, opened the boot, checked the boot, and then you go on up to the time you reach the next checkpoint. But Sri Lankans, strangely, with the civil war as a people, they are very, very nice people.
Yes.
Very, very kind people.
They are still very nice people.
Absolutely.
Very
So
nice people.
despite the war, for me, they treated me extremely well.
Yes.
I never had a bad incident that I can recall during my tenure in Sri Lanka. So I arrive at the airport.
Yes.
I ask around at the airport, where is the Gulf Air office? And I'm guided to the Gulf Air office. I reach there. I see a couple of staff in. I introduce myself to them. I should tell you that the youngest staff
Yes.
working for Gulf Air at that time was double my age.
That was the youngest staff.
The youngest staff.
And you were leading them.
And I'm told now you are supposed to manage these people.
This teenager,
This team. And
this teenager now is going to be the boss.
Absolutely.
How did they receive this news?
Obviously, the majority of them received me very, very well.
Yes.
Of course, we had one or two, you could tell when you sit with them, they're thinking in their mind,
They're not very happy.
yeah, this young boy is come here. How is he going to add any value to us?
Yes.
Uh,
How were you able to manage the operation at the airport, Mr. Mohammed? You being so young, you only have 3 years of working experience in the airline industry, having a foreign team. How did you manage?
I had very, very good teachers. And the biggest lesson that I was taught is learn from the people you're working with. At every level, it doesn't matter if you have 3 years experience or 20 years experience.
Yes.
Never go to a place and think you know more than the people who are already there.
Yes.
And people who are working there for a number of years. It doesn't matter what their level is, what their titles are.
But they have been there before you.
They have been there before me, and people have learnt certain skills that you may have missed out on.
Yes.
So your attitude is to listen to everybody and learn from everybody.
Yes.
If you go with the attitude that I know it all, you will fail.
That's a very valid advice, Mr. Mohammed. If you allow me, we'll take a short break and continue with Gulf Air office in Colombo. Dear listeners, stay tuned. Dear brothers and sisters, welcome back to Dome Podcast with my honorable guest, Mr. Mohammed Al Shukaili. Welcome back, Mr. Mohammed.
Thank you.
Now, we are in Colombo. The civil war has become more aggressive, and you're supposed to go back to Oman because it's no longer safe for you to stay there. But despite that, you decide to stay in Colombo. Why?
I actually even received phone calls from our headquarters in Bahrain.
Yes.
From one of the gentlemen that will always remain as a hero to me. He did a lot for the Omanis who were working for Gulf Air at that time.
Yes.
Mr. Hassan Juma,
MashaAllah,
who was the executive vice president of the company, the number 2 man of Gulf Air at that time. And he personally called me and told me, Mohammed, it's time for you to get out and come back to Bahrain.
Yes.
And it's no longer safe. My country manager had left, who was from Eritrea,
Yes.
A gentleman called Ephraim Gabriel at that time.
And this was how many years after you arrived in Colombo?
Immediately, almost less
So
than a year.
you didn't even
Less than a year.
You didn't even get to do anything. Yeah.
I didn't get to do much, but actually, despite all the problems that were there,
Yes.
I was adventurous. A young boy, and I used to visit different places in Sri Lanka: Nurelia, Habarana, Sigiriya,
Kandy.
Bentota, Kandy. So I didn't let the civil war
Stop
hold me
you.
home. And people used to tell me, "You're crazy. Why are you going? You should stay at home." But I enjoyed visiting different parts of Sri Lanka. And as I say, Sri Lankans are very, very nice people.
Yes.
Very warm, very helpful, very hospitable. It was a shame the civil war that was going on. But as a people, they were extremely nice people, and they are extremely nice.
So you told your boss on the phone that, listen, I'm not coming back.
I told him, I think here there is
You have to drag me back.
There is an opportunity for operations to continue,
Yes.
and my staff are here. I had a wonderful team of staff.
Yes.
And if they can make it to the office, I can make it to the office.
Yes.
And we used to be stuck because when the government imposed a curfew, we were given curfew passes to move. But when the rebels imposed a curfew, you couldn't move. So sometimes we were stuck at the airport for 3 days. We're
Subhanallah.
sleeping, eating.
Everything.
Everything were at the airport, in our office with our little mattresses. And that's how we lived. Some days it's okay. Some days you have curfews. And it was an experience like no other experience. But as I say, I had a wonderful team of staff, and who were like family for me.
Yeah.
Some of who I still keep in touch with to this day.
MashaAllah.
And we continued. I said, no, I'm okay. We organized buses that were escorted by the police. The bus would pick up passengers from the airport when they arrived, and they would take them all the way to the city where our city office was.
Yes.
And then it was up to them to get to where they needed to go. And then also from the city office, the bus would pick up anybody who was traveling and bring them to the airport.
To the airport.
Most airlines had stopped their operations.
But Gulf Air continued.
Gulf Air continued, and I'm proud to be one of the people who were there to see
MashaAllah.
that operation continue.
MashaAllah. Mr. Mohammed, you moved later on to Darussalam. And something very interesting about Darussalam is that the opportunity that you got to be the first person to be tested, to combine between the operation of the airport and the city office. What was that experience like, and what did it mean?
Actually, it was a very strange opportunity. I had gone back from Colombo I was supposed to be posted to Kuwait.
Yes.
And unfortunately, around that time, Saddam Hussein had invaded Kuwait.
Yes.
So I was told, come back to the headquarters.
In Bahrain.
In Bahrain.
Yes.
So I went back to the headquarters and I was working out of the headquarters. At that time, they were planning to move a big portion of the operations from the headquarters in Bahrain to Oman because they felt Oman was a safer place to keep the operations. So I was helping in that move. And our airport manager in Darussalam caught severe malaria. And he was put on a flight and brought back to Oman. He was an Omani. And I was asked to go and cover until they found the replacement for him.
Yes.
And I went to Darussalam to take over from him. And I found the strangest things happening in our city office.
What was that?
We had, like in many countries, we had something called a GSA, a general sales agent, who generally provides the airline with the office space, and staff are under his payroll. And for that service, we pay him 3% of whatever earnings we make in that territory. So any agent in Tanzania who sells a Gulf Air ticket, he earns 3% of that.
Yes.
And any ticket that he sells himself, he earns 12% of that. But the strangest thing that we had there was that the appointed manager from Gulf Air and the owner of the GSA were not on talking terms.
So they had disputes.
They had disputes between themselves.
Yes.
And as a result of this, the business for Gulf Air was suffering. And on several occasions, I tried to talk to both of them, but they had reached a stage of no return.
Yes.
And when I went back to the headquarters, Gharib, the Omani airport manager, had recovered and was sent back to Darussalam.
Yes.
I was relieved to go back. And I went back and I was called in to the
brief them.
To give them my brief. And I told them this is the situation as far as the sales office is concerned. And unless something is done, customers are chased away, the staff are not wearing Gulf Air uniforms.
Yes.
To spite the manager, they are coming in at any time they want to come in.
So it's a total chaos.
It's complete chaos. So they took the notes in, and I remember the vice president for sales and marketing calling me in and saying, Mohammed, we've decided for any station of 5 flights and less, we are going to send one manager to cover both the sales office as well as the airport office. And we are going to start this new approach with Darussalam.
Yes.
And we would like to send you as the first manager to be the district sales and airport manager for Tanzania.
So as they say, the lab rat.
So
they're testing on you.
Yeah.
And for you, being a young man, it's a challenge, it's an opportunity. You want to go and try, and you want to prove that you can do it.
Absolutely. And, you're talking to a young man who absolutely adored what he was doing.
Yes.
I loved what I was doing. And getting an opportunity here to look after both the sales office as well as the airport operations was a dream again come true for me.
MashaAllah.
I was an airport man, groomed, brought up with the airport. And why I tell you that I have a lot of respect for Hassan Juma.
Yes.
I was then asked to go and get a release from my vice president because I would be taken now
to another assignment
under the umbrella of sales and marketing division.
Yes.
I was under the airport operations at that time.
So you had to be
had
released.
Their own VP.
Yeah, you had to be released so that you can move on to the marketing.
Absolutely, for this opportunity. And the vice president sales and marketing told me, now, Mohammed, the obstacle for you to be given this opportunity, you must bring the release from your VP.
Yes.
So when I went to approach my VP, he wasn't happy. He told me, I've been grooming you, I'm training you. You are supposed now to go to Frankfurt as our airport manager in Frankfurt. Now you come to tell me you want to abandon us in operations? No.
Of course, this is the internal politics between departments.
Absolutely.
Every department want the best people for their team.
Department, for their team. And I went back to our Vice President, Sales and Marketing, and I said he's refused. And he had guided me, he advised me, he told me, why don't you talk to Hassan Juma,
Yes.
who was the number 2 man in the company.
Yes.
And I said, okay, but do I just go to? He said, yes, go to his office and say you want to see him. So I went to his office and I requested an appointment to meet him. And his secretary told me, just give me a few minutes. She went in to see him and he said, let him in. So I went and I told him my story. And he said, but Mohammed, you're doing so well in operations and they're about to send you to Frankfurt. You don't know with sales how well you will do under the umbrella. They can send you to places like Hatim.
This is very, very appealing to me, because the idea of going to Frankfurt must have been very interesting for a young man like you.
Yeah.
Why did you decide to choose the opportunity to go to Darussalam?
I had
to
reached,
to fix whatever damage was done there.
I had reached my ceiling as far as operations was concerned, the way that I saw it.
Yes.
As an airport manager. What is my next step after that was the question that I had for myself at that point in time. So I had to agree to leave my comfort zone, which was operations and the airport, to go into an area which was new to me, sales and marketing, in order for me to grow.
Yes.
The next growth level for me would be to become a country manager or area manager, as they called them at that time. And I couldn't do that without leaving my comfort zone. So even though it was very appealing, knowing that I get an opportunity to go to Germany, it's Europe, I grew up in UK,
the environment was very close to your upbringing.
But I looked at what was offering me growth.
Were you consulting anyone for these very important decisions in your life?
Yes. As I told you, I grew up with fantastic brothers.
Yes.
Big brothers in Gulf Air at that time. Also, at that time now, my father, who came to visit me when I was in Colombo, Sri Lanka,
yes.
And I could see the pride he had in his face when I received him at the airport and I took him to the house that Gulf Air had given me,
yes.
How happy and proud he was. He was also a big advisor for me. I went to seek a lot of advice from him.
And when you moved to Darussalam, there was an obstacle with Gulf Air. They were trying to have a route directly to Zanzibar, and they were denied for so many years. And then you came into the picture, and you got them that route. What happened?
Air Tanzania had always played hardball with anybody, including Gulf Air, who tried to land in Zanzibar.
Yes.
They considered that a domestic airport, and said no international airline can operate a scheduled flight into Zanzibar.
Yes.
So they completely blocked anybody who wanted to fly into Zanzibar at that point in time. Only African airlines like Kenya Airways, Ethiopia.
Oh, so they are allowed to
those
land
because
yes.
they were African
nations.
Airlines. They were allowed, but no international airline from outside Africa was allowed to land in Zanzibar. I was fortunate enough to have met the owner of the ground handling, ZAT,
yes.
Zanzibar Airport handling company. He was a gentleman called Mohammed Raza,
yes.
Who became a very close friend. And we used to share a lot of time together.
Yes.
After, on one fine day, he told me, Mohammed, you talk about opportunities, but why doesn't Gulf Air land in Zanzibar? I said, Gulf Air has wanted to land in Zanzibar
For so long.
For many years.
Yes.
But the problem is that we've been blocked from coming into Zanzibar. And he was extremely close to the then president of Zanzibar, Dr. Salmin Amor.
Yes.
And he said, Mohammed, I want to take you to the president and I want you to explain to him that this opportunity is being blocked.
Yes.
So he took me to his house and we sat and discussed the opportunities of having an international airline land in Zanzibar. What would it mean to Zanzibar in terms of...
What will it add?
In terms of tourism, in terms of commerce. Their fruits, vegetables.
They'll all be transferred.
Would be opportunity to sell them directly to buyers in the Gulf and beyond the Gulf,
Yes.
fish and seafood, etc. So we had this meeting and the president was surprised himself that somebody was blocking such an opportunity for Zanzibar.
Yes.
And he said, Mohammed, are you sure Gulf Air is willing to land here? I said, I'm
100% sure.
100% sure, Your Excellency. And he said, okay, I will organize a meeting. I want you to bring decision makers of Gulf Air to that meeting. And I will invite the minister who's responsible for these things. And Air Tanzania possibly will also come to the meeting.
Yes.
And we will have a meeting and I will personally chair the meeting, the president. And he gave me, after almost a week passed by, and he gave me a date. And he said, this is the date that we will hold the meeting. I immediately called our headquarters, Allah Rahmu Mohammed Al Miskri, who was at that time, I believe, Vice President of Corporate Planning.
Yes.
And his deputy was Abdurrahman Al Busaidi, Abdurrahman bin Harith Al Busaidi. And they were both very excited at this opportunity. And they told me, Mohammed, we are coming. Both of us will join the meeting. And they came and I joined them. And we sat and the president chaired the meeting. And the CEO of Air Tanzania was there. The Minister of Transportation for Tanzania was there. Both at the federal level as well as the local level of Zanzibar. And the meeting...
I will interrupt you a little bit, Mr.
Sure.
Mohammed, before the meeting. This particular job opened opportunities for you, such as this meeting with presidents. What did it add to you as a person?
As a person, it really made me grow. When you meet people of that stature, the amount of knowledge that they have, and getting an opportunity to sit with them
Yes.
and share your thoughts and listen to their thoughts, really, I think, made me grow in who I was.
We'll take another short break, Mr. Mohammed, and come back to the important meeting of finalizing the deal with the government of Zanzibar and Gulf Air. Dear brothers and sisters, welcome back to Dome Podcast with my honorable guest, Mr. Mohammed Al Shukaili. Mr. Mohammed, we were talking before the break about the important meeting between the government of Zanzibar and the officials of Gulf Air. What happened in that meeting?
Well, as I say, Allah Rahmu Muhammad Miskri
Yes.
and Abdurrahman Busaidi, who's also another hero of mine, another big mentor of mine.
Mashallah.
They were both there. And everything they offered, the minister from the federal government would
Yes.
say, Your Excellency, this is related to Muungano, meaning the union.
Yes.
So it cannot be discussed here.
Yes.
And Abdurrahman, Muhammad, they offered many solutions. They said, we'll operate the Gulf Air aircraft, which is a much bigger aircraft. It can carry cargo and everything, on a code share basis with Air Tanzania. So we will call the flight Air Tanzania Gulf Air flight number so-and-so.
Yes.
To make it a joint flight. And on that flight, we will give you a number of seats that Air Tanzania will be able to sell.
Yes.
We will give you cargo space so that you can be able to sell cargo out of Zanzibar as well.
Yes.
But every solution that they offered, the reply was
rejected.
This is a union issue and it cannot be discussed here.
Yes.
So after almost an hour or so of these talks going on, the president said, "Okay, I'd like to call an end to the meeting and give you my decision as the chairman of this meeting and the president of Zanzibar.
Yes.
My decision is that I am authorizing Gulf Air to start their operation into Zanzibar as soon as it is possible for them to start."
MashaAllah.
And he gave a message back to the president, which I don't think is good to repeat. But he said in conclusion that, look, this decision I am taking as the president of Zanzibar, please convey that message back home, and a letter will be issued today from my office
to Gulf Air
to authorize them to start flying.
Yes. Interesting. Mr. Mohammed, I'll take you back to Darussalam, where you were posted there. You got a call from the headquarters of Gulf Air in Bahrain, and you were told that there is a very important VVVIP coming to Tanzania, and he's coming for fishing. Tell us about this story, this interesting story.
You remember this story, yeah?
Yes, yes.
Well, that was a very interesting story, and again, working in the industry, as I say, opens up opportunities and doors that you sometimes say, you don't believe that they can be possible. Yeah, I got a call from our headquarters, from my boss, and he told me, "Mohammed, there is a VVIP who would like to come fishing in Tanzania."
And you don't know who's this VVIP?
I have no idea who the VIP is, and I think even if he had told me, I wouldn't recognize who the person is. But he said, "Now we need you to make arrangements. Number one, we need, of course, for you'll be required to get clearance for his aeroplane to land."
So he's coming with his own private jet?
With his own aircraft. The aircraft of UAE he's coming with.
Yes.
And he, normally for any aeroplane to go to any country, there are certain procedures that need to be fulfilled before that aeroplane can enter their airspace and land into their country.
Yes.
So he told me, "You'd need to get these clearances, and we're sending you the details of the aircraft in question. Secondly, we want you to find a location for him to be able to do fishing."
Okay. Of course, this is out of the scope of your work.
Absolutely.
You had nothing to do with fishing or anything.
Nothing to do with Gulf Air at all.
Yes. So, but you got the call from your boss.
Absolutely.
Okay. So what did you do?
So I had a very good close friend at that time.
Yes.
Who happened to be the Minister of Defense for Tanzania at that time.
Yes.
Lovely gentleman, a very, very nice man. And I immediately, I was, I didn't know anything about fishing. Fishing is not one of my hobbies that
You only know ticketing and marketing.
Absolutely, that's my life.
Yes.
And I approached him and I said, "This is the situation." And he told me, "Mohammed, we need to know who the VIP is first."
Yes.
So I called back my boss and I said, "Look, I'm getting the information, but I need to know who the VIP is." So he told me it's one of the sheikhs in Abu Dhabi. Very prominent, important sheikh.
One of the
grandchildren
grandsons of the late Sheikh Zayed.
The late Sheikh Zayed. May God rest his soul in peace.
So
I went back to Abdurrahman and I told him, "Abdurrahman, this is the situation." He said, "So he's a prince?" I said, yes, he's a prince." He said, "Okay, then we will organize and set up a camp for him."
Yes.
This is the location.
Why were they setting a camp?
Because the area that he had recommended was a bare island.
There was nothing.
At the time, absolutely nothing.
Okay.
So he said, if this man, and he's a prince, he's coming and he's going to do fishing for several days, we need to create a camp for him.
Because there is nothing.
There is absolutely nothing there. There isn't a hotel. There is no building whatsoever.
So I understand the military came and they set a camp.
They set a camp for him, and he came in, and of course we went to receive him together with Abdurrahman Kinana.
Yes.
And explained to him what arrangements had been put in place.
So the VIP, when he came with his own aircraft.
With his own aircraft. Inside that aeroplane were his boat, vehicle, a lot of different equipment, food, etc., etc.
And
it was one of these military.
The interesting part was he was flying the plane by himself.
By himself. With his friends.
Yes.
And they had come for a little bit of a holiday. So he went. And while there, he also requested to do a bit of hunting.
Yes.
And that was also organized for him.
So basically, you took them around, you were with them?
No, I was not.
You were just arranging for
I
them.
was organizing, and I remained in Darussalam.
Yes.
So I didn't go with them to... while they were doing their fishing, or when they went to
hunting.
Arusha to do their hunting, I was in Darussalam. We were communicating basically.
Yes.
And from there, he communicated back, and he wanted a small get-together.
Yes.
To be organized, and all the people who were involved in making his trip a success, he wanted them invited, and he wanted to present them a gift.
Before the gift, Mr. Mohammed, I believe that he wanted to stay in a hotel.
Yeah.
What happened with the hotel?
The hotel, I had to convince him at that time.
Yes.
The best hotel in Darussalam was Kilimanjaro.
Yes.
And at that point in time, in those years, if you open the tap of water in the hotel room, brown water it was not suitable for them to go and stay. So I told him, look, I'm a single person.
That was the plan B.
Yeah, and
Yes.
I had taken over a house from the previous manager. The previous manager was there, and he had a large family.
Yes.
I was there as a young man, alone,
Single.
bachelor.
Yes.
So I told him, look, it's better for you to come and stay at the house. At the house, everything is sanitized, everything is proper. We have a generator at home that Gulf Air had provided us with, because electricity was constantly going off. So that took a lot of convincing, because he said, no, that's your private home. I cannot impose on you and bring my friends and stay there. Absolutely not. And I told him, Your Highness, so far, are you happy with the arrangements I've made for you so far?
Yes.
And he said, yes, I'm very happy. I said, then trust me with this last arrangement for you. And finally he agreed, and they came and they stayed.
And they stayed
home.
in the house.
Yeah, they stayed in the house.
So we come to the get-together, the gathering for
the get-together,
to reward
the gathering,
everybody
to reward the people
yes.
who had played a role. I had approached Abdurrahman, the minister, and I had told him, please give me a list of people who did small bits and pieces to make the trip a success.
Yes.
Make the fishing a success, make the hunting a success. And we need to invite them. So he did the inviting, and he gave me the list. And when the sheikh came, I presented him the list. I told him, this is the list. And he said, okay, I have a gift for each one of them.
Yes.
How do we give them the gift? And I said, we're here, we're at home. In my garden, we did a nice barbecue,
yes.
get together. And I said, you can call each one and
give them the envelope.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So that's what he did. He gave an envelope to each person, and off they went. Everybody was happy. The next day now, I'm driving him to the airport.
Yes.
We had 3 cars to take him and his
friends.
Delegates, his
yes.
friends who he came with. And while we were driving to the airport, he also gave me an envelope.
As you being part of the team who worked on the organizing.
I had not put my name in the list.
Yes.
But still, the next day, he presented me with an envelope. So I told him, no. For me, it's Tashrif, yani.
It's an honor.
It's an honor to have you at home. I don't need an envelope. Thank you very much.
Yes. Gulf is taking care of me.
Very well.
Yes.
And he looked at me and he said, Muhammad, it is aib for you to refuse something that I give you. I was caught, as they say, between a rock and a hard place.
Yes.
So I said to him, I have no option but to accept, but please understand that it is also aib for me to accept this.
Yes.
But I don't want to insult you. But the way that we have been brought up is we don't take
this sort of gifts from our guests.
From our guests, for me hosting you. You know, that's an honor for me to host you. And he took back his envelope and he put it back in his pocket.
Yes.
And we continued to the airport. We talked about other things. We reached the airport. He got on board.
He left.
And he left.
What happened after that, Mr. Mohammed, is that you were moved to the UAE.
Almost, I think it wasn't even 2 weeks. It was around 2 weeks or so.
What happened?
I received notification from the headquarters.
From Bahrain?
From Bahrain.
Asking you to?
And being told that, Mohammed, you're being moved to Abu Dhabi.
You didn't know why?
I kind of felt that this trip must have had something to do with it.
Yes.
You know, because moving me from Darussalam to Abu Dhabi was one of the hubs of Gulf Air. It's a major station.
Yes.
There were 4 hubs in Gulf Air. Abu Dhabi, Bahrain, Muscat and Qatar.
Yes.
Doha. And being moved to a hub was something huge in Gulf Air. So here I was, and my Arabic was
not so good.
Nowhere near acceptable level.
Yes.
So I was being moved there, and I felt that there was something. Yes. Anyway, I said to my boss, sure, Abu Dhabi. He said, yes, Abu Dhabi. So pack, do your farewells, and
this comes with the job, Mr. Mohammed. When you work in the airline, in different stations, suddenly you're told, move to another station. It's part of the package. You expect something like this to happen all the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you don't question the decisions. Decisions are being made.
The decision is made, and their decision usually is final.
Yes.
Unless there is a very, very strong reason why you cannot go to that place.
Now, when you move to Abu Dhabi, you realize that there is a unhealthy competition there in the UAE in terms of the airline offices, and you managed to unify them and put them in synergy. What actually happened?
Actually, the headquarters had identified the problem of unhealthy competition between Gulf Air managers themselves, because for Gulf Air, the UAE was divided into 3.
Yes.
They had a manager for Sharjah in Northern Emirates, and they had a manager for Dubai, and they had a manager for Abu Dhabi and Al Ain.
Yes.
I was initially sent there as a district sales manager for Abu Dhabi and Al Ain. Later on promoted to country manager Abu Dhabi and Al Ain. And of course, while there, we had many success stories in Abu Dhabi. Yes, Gulf Air felt it was time, for the first time in the history of Gulf Air,
yes,
to unify the UAE and put it under one manager. And I was selected to be that manager.
Which led later on for you to be awarded the Manager of the Year.
Manager of the Year, actually, we got it for 6 years in a row.
MashaAllah.
Not only Manager of the Year, but also Station of the Year.
MashaAllah.
Because of the growth that we managed to achieve in UAE as far as the sales were concerned.
I would take you a little bit away from the main story, and you were in London with your father, your late father, may Allah have mercy on his soul. He had to undergo heart surgery, and you and the family members were with him. What happened?
We'd actually gone, and the doctor, we were at Cromwell Hospital, and the doctor had seen my father and advised against surgery because of the different complications that my father had.
Yes.
Of course, being that at that time I was still based in Abu Dhabi, looking after the UAE, every move that I make, anywhere I go, I always have to leave a contact for the Sheikh to know where I am.
Yes.
He was at that time the president and chief executive of Gulf Air. So he knew where I was, and I received a phone call from him, and he was on his way to the States at the time.
Yes.
And he said, where are you? And I said, I'm at the hospital. And he said, okay, I'll pass by and see you there. And he came by and he saw my father, they talked. And then he said to me, Mohammed, collect his medical records. The office of my father will collect them from you.
Yes.
And let's get a second opinion. So I said, fine. I talked to the hospital and he said, I'm leaving for the States, so I'll check up on you when I'm coming back, when I'm on my way back. But my father's office here will be in contact with you. I've given them your contact. So after a few days, the office of his father contacted me and told me, have you got all the records? I said, yes, I do. They picked them up from me. And the next day, they told me you have an appointment with a very famous doctor called Samagdi Yaqub, who's renowned. I think he's supposed to be the number one heart surgeon in the world.
MashaAllah.
Based in London. He was knighted by the Queen. And we went to see the doctor. They made the appointment, and he assigned several different tests for my father.
And he recommended,
surgery.
to go on with the operation, with the
Absolutely.
surgery.
And the part that was, all the years, I spent 9 years in Abu Dhabi working and in touch with the Sheikh.
Yes.
And I'd never seen this man lose his cool. He was a very, very, very calm man, and he still is
Yes.
a gentleman again, a very nice man. Helped a lot of people. Anyway, we did the surgery. We were
Your father
discharged.
was okay?
We're okay. I go down to pay the bill.
Yes.
And I reach to pay the bill, and they say, no, the bill has been sent to the office of the Sheikh.
Yes.
Because you guys were brought here through his office.
Yes.
And I said, okay, but I need to know how much, because even if it's there, I have to go and pay.
Yes. To pay back the
the
Sheikh.
amount to the Sheikh.
Yes.
So they said, no, if you want to know, you ask their office.
Yes.
So I went back, I told my father, this is the situation. And he said, okay, but Mohammed, you have to ask the Sheikh. This is then on us.
Yes.
You have
It's
to
a
ask
debt.
him. It's a debt.
Yes.
We have to pay it back. So I took my father back to Muscat. And when I went back to Abu Dhabi, as usual, I went to see the Sheikh. And in our conversation, I told him, Sheikh, please, I need to know
How much you paid?
The amount you paid, so
Yes.
we can pay it back. Believe me, Sheikh Hatim, this is the first time I saw the Sheikh lose his cool.
Very angry.
Upset, really upset.
Yes.
Mohammed, this is your father, and you're asking me how much? Your father is our father.
Subhanallah.
You don't ask me something like this. We help people we don't know. How about you, your father?
Subhanallah. And this is natural, honestly speaking, to everyone who treats you like a family.
Absolutely.
who is extending a helping hand to others.
Yeah.
I think this is a very noble thing to do. And now, Mr. Mohammed, after this incident, you decided to come back to Oman and join Oman Air, despite the offer to work in Al-Ittihad and maybe have other golden opportunities abroad. Why did you decide to come back to Oman and join the national carrier?
Sheikh Hatim, I think, number one, I'm a very nationalistic person. If you look at my career,
Yes.
21 years I worked for Gulf Air because Oman was part owner of Gulf Air.
Yes.
I felt that I was representing my country in
Gulf Air.
Gulf Air, irrespective of which country I was sent to.
Yes.
Still, I was there representing Gulf Air and the Sultanate of Oman.
Yes.
This is why I was there. So for me, I had been offered an opportunity by Abdurrahman Al Busaidi,
Yes.
who had come to, I was in Nairobi at the time as general manager for the continent of Africa. And he had come for a meeting in Nairobi. Again, he was looking for traffic rights for Oman.
In Nairobi.
For Kenya.
Okay.
Up to that time, they were operating on something called a TOP, Temporary Operating Permit, which you had to renew every other month.
Yes.
So they were looking for a permanent bilateral, which is normally signed between governments. So between the government of Oman and the government of Kenya. And he had called me, he told me, Mohammed, we don't have any representative there, so I need somebody to help us make meetings and also, connect us with the right people.
Yes.
So I said, fine, no issues, Abdurrahman, but I need to call my boss because there is a conflict of interest here. I'm working for Gulf Air.
Yes.
I need to talk to my boss and get his green light for me to do this.
Oh, so you are still working for Gulf Air?
Yeah, at that time I was the general manager of Gulf Air for Africa.
Yes.
So he called me to ask me this. It's Oman Air. And I said, I need to bounce this off my boss and make sure there are no issues as far as they're concerned.
Yes.
And I did. And my boss said, no, by all means, Oman is one of the owner states. Whatever help they need, please go ahead and provide it. So immediately I made arrangements for them to have a meeting room, which he required. I booked their hotel accommodation. He was coming with an Omani delegation from Civil Aviation Authority of Oman.
Yes.
And we made arrangements, and I prepared dinner with the head of the delegation that we were going to meet on the Kenyan side, the minister.
Yes.
And our delegation coming from Oman.
From Oman.
Yeah, so I said, let me organize a dinner before they meet officially in order to break the ice.
Yes.
And
So that they
start the meeting
get to know one another.
Exactly, and
Yes.
start the meeting in a more cordial manner.
Yes.
So that's what we did. And while everything went well, Abdurrahman managed to secure the traffic rights. And Abdurrahman told me, listen, Mohammed, we are now building Oman Air. And I'd love, I'm looking for people to come back and work with me in building Oman Air to make it the International Airline of Oman. And what are your thoughts? Would you like to come back? And I said, to be honest with you, I would love to come back. I lost my father, and I was not in Oman to bury him. I lost my brother, and I was not in Oman.
Subhanallah.
So I have a mum and other relatives. I'd love to be back, one, for that, and two, I'd love to see my children grow up in Oman. I've been living outside and taking them from country to country. It's good they're getting exposed to different cultures, but I'd love them to be able to grow up in their country.
MashaAllah. This is a very noble cause, to raise your kids in their own country, to have an identity. And with this, I would like to thank you so much, Mr. Mohammed bin Barak Al Shukaili, for being a guest on our podcast. And hopefully, inshallah, all of our listeners have benefited from today's session. See you soon, inshallah.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure to be here on your podcast, and all the best.
Thank you, Mr. Mohammed. Dear brothers and sisters, thank you very much for being on Dome Podcast. See you next time, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.